right, let's do it.
Cool. All right. We don't even have an intro for this thing, so we do have that. We do have that.
You're not in love with that, though, I'm noticing.
The music?
Yeah.
Oh, because I constantly trying to figure out how to like ease it in there. You know what I'm saying? Like,
It's just, it already is ease.
but it's just like
It naturally has
it
its
just
ease.
does the thing, y'all.
Yeah.
If you didn't hear what that melody just said, it just said welcome to our podcast. To be determined on the name, but it is fire and ice and water and heat.
Hey, is this a freestyle? Is this an Angel freestyle?
Poetry without rhythm or rhyme.
Poetry without rhythm going off the dome. See, my freestyle the first time was whacking. I'ma stay on. I'm back in my bag. It's the D-Lo flow. Listen to our podcast. That's what we do. Ho. I think that. What's up, y'all?
Here we go, y'all. Oh my gosh. Here we are with another episode. And so
That was a better freestyle than the first time. I'm just gonna throw
was
that out
definitely
there. Marketed
better.
improvement, but we still have a lot of work to do.
it was definitely progression over perfection. Bro.
Yes, amen.
Progression over perfection.
Amen.
That's exactly what we're doing here, y'all. We are aspiring to be progressive men, having progressive conversations in the pursuit of perfection that we won't ever reach, but we're going to pursue it, right? And here we are. Progressing in bars, progressing in camera setup. It only took us forever and a day this time. Last time it took us forever, right? But we got it all figured out. And so, here we are
guys.
again, man.
Yeah.
Welcome. So glad y'all are back joining us.
Welcome to the pod. This is D'Angelo speaking. We got Angel right here.
Yes.
Lock brothers, dark skin brothers,
we
glasses
go.
brothers. You know what I mean?
Locked
We got
in.
a lot of alignment.
Right? More. Oh man. Okay, so
I
we.
rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
So something y'all can process and give us some feedback on. I threw a crazy name out there because I just love acronyms, and D'Angelo's like graceful to just run with it. I threw the name out there, More Life, and the life is. This is definitely not a Drake reference, y'all. So like,
But how could it not
get that
be?
out there, right? The life is an acronym, right? Locked in fellas elevating, right?
Okay.
Locked in fellas elevating. I feel like it's fire. Maybe y'all can give us some feedback if you don't like the More Life. But we'll figure it out.
The Conquer Peace is also something I'm throwing in the hat that Angel is continuing to not entertain, but we should probably get on the subject of the podcast.
There's a lot of names, y'all. So
Yeah,
just throw
yeah.
some feedback. I think that's a dope name too. But all right, so here we are, D'Angelo and Angel here talking about a fun topic. Am I leading this one or are you leading this
Well,
one?
here is what I'll do is I will give people a reminder of what our podcast is about. We kind of explore different subjects in the emotional world. It's just one to outline and normalize guys talking about emotions, but specifically the emotions that kind of linger and are not necessarily as socially acceptable to discuss, things like loneliness and grief and those lingering emotions that I think that we as men kind of struggle with. Every human struggles with, but I think that as men there's an extra heat or seasoning of struggling because of how we're socialized to deal with emotions, which is to compartmentalize. So that's what we're doing. And today's subject is going to be around vulnerability.
Oh my goodness, vulnerability.
I've never seen you not excited to talk about something.
It's a heavy topic.
Yeah.
It's such a heavy topic.
Is
y'all.
it though?
Man, like it's such a heavy topic. Well, it's okay. So what I was processing, I'm like my prayer time, y'all. Your boy be praying, praise the Lord. I was learning that the Bible talks about a hardened heart, and it talks about softening your heart, and then it also talks about a heavy heart. But it's more of a sinful thing to have a hardened heart, and it is more of a peaceful pursuing God to have like a guarded / soft heart. But that aspect of like having a heavy heart, like that's when you're like going through like some sort of suffering in silence or just suffering in general, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's no sin in having a heavy heart.
Right.
It means you're holding on to something. You're sitting with something heavy, and yeah, as I was like sitting on that aspect, it was like, how do you guard a heavy heart? And I feel like that's what the vulnerability thing is,
I
right?
already like where you're
You
going.
see, that's why like this is heavy for me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And this is a weird analogy. I don't know where I'm going with this, y'all, but I just want you to process this way, like an egg. Whether the egg is when the egg is boiled, if you boil an egg and if you just put an egg in some water, right? They're the same weight, the same weight.
Mm-hmm.
But when you boil that egg and whatever's in it hardens, it sinks, right? And so I don't know where I'm going with this analogy. It just seemed like a good image I wanted to leave you all with. Where are you when you're boiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you sinking because you're heavy, or are you above water because your heart is soft, right?
Yeah.
Whatever's in you is soft, right?
And
See,
this, okay, keep
See
going,
where I'm
keep
going with
cooking.
this?
No, I mean,
Right?
because you might need to toss me the ball. I might can keep cooking too, but keep going.
Probably. It's just such a crazy thing. And it's so like, what do you do with this heaviness? Because when you're heavy, it doesn't mean your heart is to the point of hardened, but you're sinking, right? And that's the point I want to like focus on. You're sinking. And so like, the Bible tells us to confess our sins, right? Because that heavy heart can lead to a hardened heart, and not necessarily guarding your heart from the things that need to be poured into it, right?
Yeah.
And so so that's where vulnerability comes in. How do you discern what you should be sharing? And discern just means selective and intentional in how you give or receive or process information, things, or people. How do you navigate what you share versus what you need to hold on to? And maybe I need to backtrack and we need to like define what vulnerability is. I just jumped right into it.
No,
but
well,
yeah.
I think that's going to be the question we explore. But
Yeah,
I think what's crazy is, right, and you talk about this little boiled egg metaphor you gave, the difference between, I think when you're going through a heavy time, obviously the ideal is that you would be the floating egg.
Absolutely.
But the solution to it a lot of times is the last thing you want to do, which is to be vulnerable, let other people in. Because a lot of times the sinking egg is the one that has self-isolated and now it's starting to dwell and go on the shame cycle and go on all the other things. And one of the many vital solutions to that is letting other people in so that they can lift you and speak life into you and help you get a softer heart. You know what I mean? Whether it's therapy or community or both. So I think that it's funny and also perfectly connected to vulnerability.
Okay.
Yeah. But you asked a question that, because you're already cooking, so I'm going to let you continue to lead.
I mean, this is a topic where like I don't know if I can say like I'm going through it. Like I think I shared with you earlier before we like hopped on, but like I had a really intimate, vulnerable conversation with a friend yesterday, a mutual friend for us, and I like shared how I had to go through a lot of like hurt and drama and craziness with like family stuff, where like I actually was like disowned. It was just heavy to share it because I also processed the aspect of like me being disowned from this family member, how there was always like a tough back and forth tug with this relationship with this individual. And this also, this is the individual that I'm like grieving, right? Like, and I feel like I'm being like code, like, y'all, my stepmother passed away last year, and it was really heavy for me because we were just getting to a place of growth after we've had a really tough season. And to lose her and to know that I can't like do anything about it but to accept it and like the whole grief process is both frustrating, is both saddening, and is also like joyful to know that she's like been called home, right? And so that helplessness with it like does feel like a weakness as a man. And I shared this with someone that like is a mutual friend that like I'm growing to become stronger in friendship, and that vulnerability was like I'm giving them very sensitive information. Yeah, sensitive information. I don't know what they're gonna do with it. And sharing about the death of someone that I'm grieving and still processing, like there's not really much that this person could offer me but being present with me. And so it's like, was it even worth sharing? Like me thinking in that aspect of like having a heavy heart about that topic. Like, what do I get out of this vulnerability? So I think like that's probably like a question I would ask. Like, it's great to talk about feelings. It's great to go to therapy and talk about these things. It's great to have a friend to talk about it. But like, is that actually helpful? And yeah, I'm gonna stop right there. See
Well,
what you
no,
guys say.
is it helpful specifically? You're talking about in the example where you shared with someone that you're still getting to know
Yeah.
something that's sensitive. Like, is that a helpful thing to do?
Yeah, because I mean, like, I think I'm sure we're gonna go in the same direction and agreeing with that. I'm just processing like if you're someone wrestling with the insecurity of like once I share this sensitive information, I can't control how this person receives it. Like,
Right.
what's in it for me being on the giving end of that vulnerability?
Yeah. The giving the good it's funny because this was the subject in my therapy session today, Thursday. But so I do feel like, and I feel like I got some breakthrough after speaking to her about it. But I think there's in being people who are very into we're relational human beings, the potential benefit of giving, I believe, is being seen, known, and supported, which is what we all desire.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially with more than we would want that, especially with the sensitive things.
Yeah,
But there's the fear of the risk that won't
Yeah.
happen, that inhibits you from doing it.
exactly. Yeah,
So the question then is, well, we can't control people and how they respond. Sure, we can maybe get to the point of being able to tell people, hey, like this is actually what I'm needing from you when I'm.
yeah,
But sometimes that doesn't. Those are the relationships that are more established that you can do things like that with. But
Agreed.
so I think that's the benefit of it. In my head, but at the same time, I still struggle. I struggle with it. I mean, I think I shared that earlier in our group. Is just like just that realization that I can really, because I've become very more intense about leaning in more into vulnerability. But I can revert back to Child D'Angelo, where I become so guarded because I'm fearful of subconscious almost, like
yeah.
just fearful of letting someone in and them not seeing a part of me, and they're just like, oh, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, and then they leave, and then I'm stuck with that feeling of rejection and needing to go through that process of
Yeah.
working through shame. And
Yeah.
I think that for me specifically, in coming into a new environment where I'm getting to meet a lot of new people, that there is that thought process in my head where it can inhibit me from being maybe who I would be.
Yeah.
But I do think that freedom is experiencing that rejection and being like, oh, okay, that person's not for me. I'm not for that person. And knowing how to affirm yourself through that
Yeah.
and not clamming up and closing up with the next
Yeah.
person.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. I think there's definitely like, so there's I feel like there's two sides of the coin of pride, right? Like I feel like on one side of pride, like you're very confident or overconfident or overzealous. Externally, like really boastful and just you're that guy and nobody can tell you otherwise
Right.
because you just are superior and better than everyone. And then I also think that there's that pride where you think so little of yourself, right? And I think feelings that come with that, I think both you have to navigate vulnerability. And I think both of those sides of pride are like cousins, if I'm going to use like a family tree or whatever, right? Like, I feel like a cousin to pride would be condemnation, shame, and guilt, right? Because in that high of high prides, if you remove yourself from being this overconfident person, you really are just an insecure and really hard on yourself, I would imagine. And then on the lower end of pride, of like you relish in believing that you are lower and less than people. You also kind of hold it like a badge.
Oh,
right?
fascinating.
Right. And I feel like where I'm going with this, let's learn the plain angel. I feel like that's what vulnerability is. It's like vulnerability is like taking a piece of your heart that is fragile and you believe and see it as weakness and you're trusting someone else with it when you don't even trust yourself with it.
Yeah, it's done process. It's not pretty. It's not a
Yeah,
nice.
yeah.
It's Christmas and it's that ugly gift.
It's the ugly gift.
Yeah, that did you even pay for it? Like, I don't
Right?
know, but here it
Exactly.
is. Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you want somebody to like pet it like it's some precious like gem or ruby or whatever, right? And so I feel like that's kind of, I'm giving all these analogies today, y'all.
Are you cooking?
But like I feel like that's kind of what it is with vulnerability, and that aspect of it is you're taking the ugly parts of you and you're trusting someone to like nurture it and take care of it in a way that you don't have the strength to do for yourself. And I think that's super powerful that like community gives you that opportunity, right? Like we're not saying trust everybody. That's where discernment and taking the right precautions and like knowing that these are safe people to you and for you, whether it's a therapist or a really close friend or even like a family member. We are saying that like, you know, you also run into the risks where like you're vulnerable with somebody and it may not be received in the way you expected or wanted it to. And honestly, I feel like the most important part of like vulnerability is like letting go of something that you held on to define you. Like I feel sometimes the vulnerability is just like letting go of that thing and putting it out there rather than like holding it in, you know?
Yeah, I think that if we were to connect this back to just men in their emotional journey too, is just like, bro, like vulnerability is so essential to our survival, to our ability to be seen and connect. And like, let's be real, bro. Like, man, like no matter what scale of man you are, you want to feel seen and protected. And the only way you can really obtain that is by letting people in.
Yeah.
And the depth you let people in is the depth in which you will feel seen and known.
Yeah.
And you it's essential, like, bro, like, and you know, I'm a softie and I struggle with vulnerability. So
Same. Yeah.
so you know, there's something there, but I think that the first step is understanding that part, that y'all, this is actually essential to our survival as human beings. We're wired for it. When we talk about relationship, it's about, you can't separate true relationship and vulnerability.
Yeah.
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 So that's number one in my head of like understanding vulnerability. If I were to have a number two, not that like we have to have like this checklist, but I think that it also requires us to understand what we are wanting from people before we share. Like I do think we should do that work. Like
That's good.
like I feel like I should have an idea of like, yo, actually I'm coming to you for advice, or I'm coming to you because I want some empathy or like some reflection. Like when you're sharing with people, I do think that it's of service to yourself and them if you set those personal expectations.
Yeah. No, absolutely, I agree. Like bringing that egg analogy back, right, y'all? Like
You hungry though?
Maybe. But yeah, like bringing that egg analogy, right? Like whether you're the egg floating or the egg sinking, like you need to guard it, right? You need to guard your shell because your shell, regardless of either way where you are, it's fragile, right? So just like you said, like you have to be intentional with that process of being aware that you are wrestling with something that's vulnerable or sensitive to you, and also being intentional like how you were letting people into that process, right?
Yeah.
Like that intentionality piece. Like, so I think that's a great point to process and point out there as well. Like in your guarded process, you have to be considerate of like, who are you letting in to help you preserve that fragile egg, right? Or vulnerability. I think that's like a really important aspect as well. So like, okay, so acknowledging and intentionality, and I don't know, like you said, there's not like a step process with this thing.
But yeah, I think those are essential.
But those are definitely essential, right? So I don't know how long we've been rapping. Like, it's crazy because it feels like we could have been talking for like forever. I don't think we've been talking that long, but I'm gonna just say we probably got like maybe like 3 or 5 more minutes.
Okay, yeah.
And so like, I feel like we said a lot of good things for people to sit on for sure.
Yeah.
And not putting you on the spot, I'm just like, if we had 3 to 5 more minutes, right? What is something, and it might even be a part 2 for this, y'all, if you're really like this. What is something that like in your journey, in our journey, that like we really think is so important for individuals to like process? And I don't know if I put you on the spot.
No, I think that that's a good question, and I do think we should do a part 2 because I have so much more to say.
I know.
Yeah, but if I were to talk about, part 1 would be more about the beginning stages of vulnerability. 1, I already said, understand that it's essential. I would say the next step, like I said, is then to do the work to understand what you need, so that you understand what your expectations are, and then you can give that to that person, and then you get to learn, is this person able to adjust to what I'm asking of them? I think that's what we should be measuring when we're talking about, should I be vulnerable with you? Yeah. Like, sure, it's one, like, do I feel safe with you? Like, do I feel comfortable enough to even share these things with you? But then it's like, hey, like, I just need you to give me like empathy, like, you know what I mean? And like,
Yeah.
let's see how you handle that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that those are the three things that come to mind when I'm like, if you're starting your vulnerability journey, those are the things that I would start with. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. I think all those things are great. And I think I only want to just like add one. I would challenge you, whoever's listening to it, is like, what are you gaining from holding on to this thing, this suffering that you are sinking with? And what opportunities that you could, be blessed by when you let that go and trust people that you feel safe around to help you through that thing, right? Like I really urge you to like ask yourself, what are you getting out of holding on to this thing? Like what is that pride? What is that fear of like condemnation or guilt or shame that you're holding on to? And like what's preventing you from trying, right? To try something different, because, I would say the vulnerability, probably holding on to it, didn't get you where you want it, but you probably felt a level of control.
Yeah.
And I would encourage you to like ask yourself like why am I holding on to this thing? And has being in control of my vulnerability really helped me become a better person?
That's good.
I think that's like the biggest thing. Okay,
I
you
agree.
got
I'm
something.
sorry, this will
I feel
be
like you got
quick.
something. Yeah.
To double down on that,
On
it might feel like it's effective, you controlling and compartmentalizing this thing, but I guarantee you that thing is coming out in it's eating at you somehow, bro. Yeah, it's eating at you. So you might as well go ahead and let it go and feel supported somehow. So, all right, I'm done.
We probably doing a part 2 on this, y'all. But we left you all with some nuggets. Spend some time. Spend some time. What am I holding on to? Who can I support? Who can I reach out to for support?
Yeah.
How can I be intentional with that process? Whether I need to vent, whether I need advice to fix, and what do you have to lose, and what do you have to gain by holding on to it or letting it go? But here we are.
Boom.
We gave y'all part 1. It's definitely gonna be part 2, bro.
Yeah.
But D'Angelo, Angel, pleasure. Hopefully this blessed y'all. Peace. Forgot to look at the camera.
All right, cool. Yeah.